Are you a company looking for support in making digital content? Why not try GL Pro? GL Pro are a business based in London that help businesses like yours create content for the web, whether it's podcasts, video, or even websites. These guys are really good at what they do. For a free consultation, please contact GL Pro on www.glpro.co.uk/TigerHeartChats. Welcome, guys, to episode 5 of another fantastic Tiger Heart Chats. I've got an amazing guest for you. She is a brilliant, brilliant person, and I'm really excited to get her on to this podcast. Her team reached out to us after we went live with a few of the podcasts, and when I found out that this person was interested, please welcome to the stage, Rania Robinson.
Hello, Sanj. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. How are you doing? I heard a little bump. Are you okay?
Oh, sorry, no, that was my phone. I was just moving my phone. Yeah, I've got my headphones on, so it's hard to hear what's going on outside of, yeah.
So, Rania, there's loads of people listening to this podcast who want to know who you are and where you're from.
Okay, so I am chief executive and one of the partners of an agency called Quietstorm. We're an advertising agency, top 100 advertising agency, probably best known for our Haribo TV work, which is probably the most sort of well-known, iconic work that we've done sort of recently.
And tell us a little bit about the business, like how long it's been going for and how you got involved with the business.
So I've been running the business for the last 8 years. I've been working, my husband founded the business 25 years ago. His history is he was a creative, best known for his work, very sort of famous work and still sort of very sort of well-known and applauded work now with the Orange Tango slap work.
Oh my God.
I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that when I was at school.
Yeah, so it's still, I think it's still sort of listed as sort of one of the sort of, best pieces of advertising of our time. I think it's sort of in the top 5 best ads. And it still often comes up as an iconic piece of creative work. So he was responsible for that work many years ago now. And I had the idea to set up the agency 25 years ago because he actually wanted to write and direct his own work, which at the time was really unusual. And it's still quite unusual, to be honest with you. You tend to be either a creative or a director, very rarely both, or you're a creative agency and a production company. I mean, these days, businesses do offer production services and it's kind of much more the norm. But certainly at the time, it was a groundbreaking business model. And I think even now, we're still quite unusual in the fact that our creatives write and direct. So that is quite unusual when it comes to sort of TV commercials and the kind of bigger budget film work. But yeah, I mean, obviously people are producing content and film work and AV work, as part of the creative process now. But that is still crossing over from creative to director is still quite unusual.
How long have you been working within this realm?
Well, I've been in marketing for over 25 years. Sort of showing my age now, really, probably even longer than that. But my background was actually more what was then called below the line versus above the line, which is now, I mean, everything's just blurred now because the way people consume media is just so different. But, my background then was much more kind of experiential marketing and branded content, but in a different it had a different sort of shape back then, but also things like shopper marketing and all the kind of, I guess, non-traditional stuff, which I mean, now it's, like I said, it's all integrated communication. It's all about, getting people whatever touch point. But at the time, there was a much more of a distinction between your kind of classic TV, TV advertising, print advertising versus your kind of more engagement-led activity, sort of on the ground stuff.
And then you met your husband before you joined Quietstorm? Yeah,
so we've been together for quite some time before Quietstorm, and we always said we'd never work with each other. Actually, it was one of those things that you kind of say, but it kind of made sense the way the market was going with kind of the lines blurring between traditional and kind of non-traditional communication. It just kind of made sense. I could bring that dimension to the business. So yeah, it just kind of happened organically, and has been, it's been great. Worked out really well in terms of what I've been able to bring to the business versus their core kind of heartland, if you like, which was more traditional TV advertising.
How did you fall into this advertising space? Where did you kind of get this spark within you to engage with this platform, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't follow a very conventional path into the industry, and I don't think I've probably done anything in a particularly conventional way. I mean, I grew up in a family household that was actually my family are Egyptian. I was sort of first generation immigrant coming to the UK. And, certainly when I was growing up and at that time, you were encouraged to go into more classically academic professions, and classic professions like, medicine or finance or law or things like that. My dad was a doctor, my mum was a teacher. So I didn't really have any exposure to the creative sort of industries or the creative industries, I guess. And I was always encouraged to move much more towards classic academic subjects. I went to a very, very academic school, and that's kind of where the emphasis was in my house. But I always felt that just didn't suit me. I knew from quite a young age. I don't know really where it came from, other than watching TV and watching the ads on telly. And I used to love the ads. For me, I enjoyed the ad breaks more than I enjoyed the programming sometimes. And ads was just so fantastic back then. And my mum used to say to me, if you could learn your lessons as well as you could learn the words to these ads, you'd be doing much better at school. So I kind of I knew that I didn't really want to follow the conventional path that my parents had taken, but I didn't really know what else was out there. I grew up in outside London. I grew up in a place called Salisbury, which was very kind of, lovely little city. But again, you don't feel like, you feel like this world of media, of sort of TV programming is just almost like an alternate universe. In my head, it was like an alternate universe. It never felt like it was something I could be part of. So it's not like I grew up thinking, right, I want to work in advertising, and I want to work in media, or so I kind of it was a bit of a zigzaggy path into it. I knew very early on that I didn't want to be a doctor, or I didn't want to be a lawyer, or any of the things that my parents were sort of encouraging me to be. And I kind of was very disenfranchised with school. I went to a very academic grammar school. It wasn't, I wasn't inspired. They didn't support any of the arts. They didn't support anything that wasn't classic, kind of classic subjects, if you like. So I always felt slightly disenfranchised with the whole educational experience. So I made a decision kind of quite early on not to go into higher education, and because I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So when I was 16, my mum moved to London. I lost my dad when I was quite young, and she...
I'm so sorry.
This is, one of those things that happens. But she was an Arabic and Islamic teacher. So obviously you wouldn't expect there'd be much call for that in a little, town, city like Salisbury. So we moved to London. She got a job in an academy in London. And that's when, for me, I kind of feel like I kind of discovered the world in a way. One, I felt like, oh my God, there's people like me here, because, Salisbury wasn't like that. We were probably one of the very few foreign families in the whole of Salisbury. It was such a tiny minority. Wow. Whereas in London, there was just such an eclectic mix of cultures, and I felt at home. I suddenly felt at home. I suddenly felt, oh, there's people here like me, and I suddenly felt closer to the idea of the creative industries and media. And I for me, because I hadn't done the university degree, I thought, well, what's the easiest way for me to get into any industry I want to get into? So at the time, most people had secretaries. I mean, that's changed a lot in recent years. But so for me, the idea of, well, if I got a secretarial course under my belt, I could pretty much pick and choose wherever I wanted to work, and I could then get into the creative fields. And I didn't really know what. I just knew something within music or media or anything sort of along those lines. So my first job was with a music publishing company, where I spent 6 months as a secretary.
Which company?
Gosh, you know what? I cannot remember the name of it. I cannot remember the name of it. It was such a long time. This goes to show how long ago it was and how old I've got. But I can't actually remember, to be honest with you. But I only stayed there 6 months, and a friend of mine had started working at Virgin Media, and she got me got me a job at Virgin Media, which was incredible. It was, it was Richard Branson owned at the time. Wow. It was one of his first. It wasn't Virgin Media. Sorry, it was Virgin Vision, which was kind of video distribution company.
Right.
So I went in there in an admin role, and I was, starting to get closer to the whole world of media and entertainment, and kind of. But I was in the sales department, and I kind of knew that it was fine. I enjoyed being in a kind of creative culture and an entrepreneurial culture, but I kind of knew that I probably wasn't in the right part of the business. And the marketing guys, who I worked very closely with, being in sales, seemed to be kind of doing the better job. And I was a bit like, oh, that looks a lot more interesting. So that was the start for me of this idea of, okay, marketing feels like an area that I could be really interested in. And that's when things really took off for me, because I had a real sense of something that I wanted to do, a passion, an interest. And I think often that's half the battle, is really figuring out what it is you want to do, and then you can work towards getting there. And that was, it's quite late in life for me, really, I guess, compared to some people. So I would have been probably in my early 20s at that point, which I guess for most people, they're just coming out of uni at that point. But that's when my career started, really. And then from there, I went into a marketing agency called Billington Cartmel, who are now, I think they're called Hey Human now. And we worked on sort of on-pack promotions and sampling programs and things like that. And then that was it, really. And then that's how my career sort of took off.
Amazing. It's quite interesting, just your perspective on how you got into the industry. I mean, there are traditional routes of getting into this type of industry, but there are a lot of people that I've met who've kind of gone into it from a sort of punk rock, hip hop kind of vibe, like very just trying to get into a space and then make do with the opportunity that's there, and then for that to kind of grow.
Yeah.
And usually a lot of the people within the creative media industries usually come from a very, I don't want to say disenchanted space,
yeah.
but just somewhere that's kind of given them a bit of drive to be expressive, to be to explore narratives in new and exciting ways using media.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are a bunch of oddballs, to be honest with you, and I think that's why for me, not when we all come together, we're all perfectly normal, aren't we? But I think certainly for me, I always felt like a bit of an oddball, in certain circumstances. But so I do think a lot of creativity is inspired through experience, isn't it? And through things that you've been through, and people who think differently, who kind of original thinkers, people that don't kind of follow convention. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess the two things go hand in hand, really. And it's the same with entrepreneurs. I think you find that, disproportionate number of them haven't followed a conventional path. They've gone their own way. And I think creative people are similar, or people who are drawn to the creative industries are similar. I mean, we do obviously have a lot of university graduates in the industry and lots of privately educated and things like that. But I think still there's a spirit that's quite unconventional in all of us, and quite rock and roll. Our own way.
No, it's brilliant. Yeah. There's some things you touched on just with regards to how you got into this industry, and I'd like to kind of focus on them. That's okay?
Yeah.
You mentioned that your family are originally from Egypt.
Yes.
Whereabouts in Egypt?
So Cairo. So I was so young when I was born there, but I was in England by the age of 3. So I don't really remember a life there. I mean, we'd go back and visit family and stuff, but yeah. So, but yeah, we came over from Cairo. I
was lucky to go to Egypt. I think it was like 2007, so before the Arab Spring, and it was one of those countries that it was kind of on the list, but I never really thought about going, and it like blew my mind. Like some of the ruins that are out there are just crazy, and it's just, every Indiana Jones film I'd seen just came back to me from going there. Such a beautiful, beautiful country, beautiful people.
Yeah, I mean, it's got an incredible history. And the more you sort of learn about it, the more fascinating it becomes. It's one of those places though that you kind of either love or hate, I think. And I've had very mixed feedback from people, but I mean, I love it. I love it. It's got a very special kind of a feel. As a place that's got such a rich history. I think it's always fascinating when you go places like that.
Yeah, I mean, the identity is just so unique. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I saw the pyramids. Just literally, I was in like a car and we were driving towards them and I could see them and I was like, whoa, what the hell was that?
Yeah, and it's right in the middle of the city as well.
Yeah.
The city's grown further and further out. And actually, I've seen that over the years of going back to Egypt,
right.
Is that the city's got closer and closer to the pyramids. It's kind of expanded out, which is quite mad. It's that mix of the ancient and the modern, and it's quite incredible.
So you came from Egypt, you lived in Salisbury for a long time. When did you move to London?
So I came when I was 16.
Okay.
Reluctantly, actually, at the time, but it was the best thing that could have happened, really.
And whereabouts in London did you guys move to?
So we moved to East Acton because the school that my mum taught at was very close by. And the first year I was there, I tried a college in London. And to be honest with you, I felt quite overwhelmed. And I don't know if it was just the wrong college, but I'd gone from somewhere that was very sleepy and very small and quiet and to this kind of crazy city. And I remember my first day at college and it was just like, it was chaotic. It was mental. I'd never experienced anything like it. The number of kids in the class, the kind of unruliness and the chaos. I think it was probably just the wrong place. But I came home the next day and I said, I'm not going back there. So I just worked in retail for a year whilst I kind of was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But I knew that I've always been quite independent, and my mum was quite strict, as you'd imagine. Not in kind of as strict as and fundamental in her beliefs at all. But she was still, coming from an Islamic background, there was still a lot of restrictions, I felt, as a young lady, as a young woman. And I just wanted my freedom. I just wanted to be independent. I wanted to be earning money. I wanted to get my own place. So I always knew I just wanted to be in the workplace as soon as I possibly could be so I could get my independence. Yeah. So I spent a year working in retail just whilst I was sort of in between college years, I guess, and enrollments. And it was at that point that I decided that I would enroll and do the secretarial course. So I'd moved out by the time I was 17, 18, and I was, forging my own path. So that was, at the time, in a way, I was quite strategic in the way I approached my career, even though it felt quite haphazard. And when you look at my CV, it looks really haphazard, but it's all kind of led to the right place, really. And it's everything I've done is built on what I've done before.
Absolutely. And I feel, when looking at CVs, if a CV isn't haphazard, then you don't really have anyone with any experience. You need that kind of crazy journey to define a person, I think. Absolutely.
I think now more than ever, to be honest with you, because nothing is linear anymore. Nothing is, everything's changing so rapidly that you need people that are just comfortable with change, that are comfortable with, uncertainty, not uncertainty, that's probably the wrong word, but just being comfortable with adapting to new things. And I think the more haphazard your CV is, the more likely you're a person that can adapt and pivot and do all those things that you need to do right now.
Yeah.
I've had to for the last, over 10 years now, probably the last 10, 15 years.
So let's talk about Quietstorm. So you've been there 8 years. Tell me about the business and your role there.
So my role is really to kind of, I guess, drive the vision for the business, making sure that we're kind of staying relevant, I guess, as in an industry that's ever changing. I take sort of personal responsibility for, I guess, setting the vision, like I said, agency profile and new business. That's probably an area that I particularly enjoy and I'm probably, particularly good at. So, so that's kind of, but for any business leader, I guess it's just about making sure that it's optimizing. It's all kind of ensuring the business is kind of fit for purpose. in constantly evolving, in a very constantly evolving marketplace, if you like. It's constantly changing, or we're constantly dealing with new challenges.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a, it feels like it's sort of been wartime, 8 years of wartime. But I think that's just the new normal now, really, isn't it? It's facing into change and challenging environmental, situations all the time. And the last few years particularly.
Tell us about some of the projects that you've worked on at Quietstorm.
Well, I guess probably some of the work that I'm most excited about. I mean, I'm really proud of a lot of the work that we've done with our clients. And there's many great brands that we work with. I mean, like I said earlier, Haribo is probably the best known work.
Yeah, tell us about the Haribo project.
Well, the Haribo work I don't know if you've seen it, is the adults speaking with kids' voices.
Yeah, I've seen it. I love it. Yeah, I love it.
So that's something, I mean, that's a campaign that's been running now, I think it's probably in its sixth year in the UK. We've been working with Haribo for over 10 years. It's one of our longest standing relationships. We've historically, Herwig, who heads up Haribo globally, is a client that we had a relationship with previously to the Haribo work. And I think you find that you often do your best work with clients that you've got a long-standing relationship with, because the trust is there, and you get to do some fantastic stuff. But that was originally a UK-based client, UK account. We did the Kids Voices campaign for the first time. We launched it about 6 years ago, and it's just been phenomenal in terms of the success that it's had for the brand, both in the UK but also globally. Yeah. And actually, as a business, Haribo have never been centralized in their marketing. Every market can do their own thing. But this campaign has now gone to, I think, 11 or 12 markets around the world. Right. It's been adopted because it's just been so sort of universally loved and so effective. And it's one of those ideas that just, it transcends kind of a market, or and cultural nuance, or the whole idea behind it is about kind of releasing your inner child and that kind of childlike happiness that you get when you open a packet of Haribo, and actually that's exactly that's the feeling that ad gives you, and it's a very deeply universal insight that wherever you come from, you can relate to it, and it really resonates. And it's quite interesting. Often, when people ask you, what do you do, and I'll talk about running an advertising agency, they say, "Oh, what do you know?" So we do the Haribo ads, and the kind of response you get from that is so incredible. So that obviously makes me feel really proud. And there's lots of other work we've done with Vimto and Young Seafood and various other people as well that I'm really, really proud of. But then also as a business, we have always, in the kind of 25-year history of the agency, we've always invested time and effort in doing stuff that is actually going to have an impact in the world beyond kind of commercial stuff, if you like, that's really more about driving societal change. Absolutely. So the work we do, for example, with Women's Equality Party is stuff that I'm also really, really proud of, because there's a greater cause behind it, if you like, in many ways. And it's actually something that can, drive real societal change. So we've been working with those guys for the last couple of years, and that's something I'm very proud of. The latest campaign we did was driving kind of awareness around violence against women, and we used a campaign which was really trying to highlight some of the issues that have been raised around in Westminster and kind of Pestminster. I'm sure you've been kind of reading about it, and actually how rife abuse is within Parliament, and the idea being that how are things going to change when actually it's going on within sort of Parliament. So that was a really strong campaign that we're really proud of, and the idea was to get MPs that have been accused of abuse to step down from running in the general elections. And we actually managed to get all of them, we were targeting 5 MPs, and we managed to get them all to step down, which we're really proud of.
Wow.
So something that can really affect change.
It's quite a strong subject to get involved with. How did you guys get involved with it? Is it the WES? Is that how you hyphenate?
WEP.
Sorry, WEP. Did they approach you with regards to
actually, interestingly, we got approached. They used to be with an agency called Now.
Okay.
an advertising agency, and they actually approached us. They had to, for various reasons, resign the account. So Melissa Robertson, who was kind of fronting the account for Now, she ran the pitch process, and she kind of highlighted us as an agency that she felt would be a really good fit, along with many other agencies, brilliant agencies actually. And it wasn't a full blown kind of pitch response. It was really more about chemistry and how we sort of sharing work and just sharing a point of view on WEP. And the chemistry was great, and it felt like a really natural fit for us. So.
Absolutely. And so you touched on that previously, just with regards to the trust between you and your clients, because when you're creating a creative vision for one of your clients, it's not a mathematical equation, isn't it? It's a discussion, and you have to develop that relationship between them. So obviously, so that you understand their core values and they trust you with those core values. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that type of relationship with your clients and the importance of it.
Well, we've got a very particular kind of approach, I guess, and quite a distinctive style of work, if you like. And it's not for everybody. And we definitely have certain clients that we attract, and some that just wouldn't work with us, to be honest with you. And we're all about doing really bold, standout kind of work that's going to create some talkability and often and original. We want to do stuff that's original, stuff that feels fresh, and actually that can make some people feel quite uncomfortable, because anything that's often the case with creativity and original ideas is they're not familiar, and that can make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. So we definitely tend to attract the more confident marketer that's a bit more maverick, that's kind of wants to make a mark in the world, that wants to do something that's going to get talked about, that's going to stand out, that's going to be really impactful. And that isn't always for everybody, because I think some people want something that feels a little bit safer, a bit more familiar, a bit more conventional. So I think already we're working with people that kind of recognize that they have to trust their agency, and they've bought into us because we've got a very particular and distinctive way of working, distinctive style of work. So you're kind of halfway there. It's quite self-selecting in a way. I think if we wouldn't probably attract an overly cautious client. And actually, to be honest with you, from our point of view, our work, the effectiveness the work delivers, we've got case study after case study that shows real effectiveness from a commercial point of view, from a business brand building perspective. So it's not really, there's not much risk in it, because we've got lots of proven case studies that show that this work is really effective and it will have an impact on the bottom line. So there's not really that much risk involved. But sometimes the work can be very, it's like anything that's distinctive, isn't it? It's you're putting yourself up there to be noticed, and some people don't feel comfortable with that kind of work. So but it does, time helps with any relationship. You do build trust over time, and obviously once you've proven yourself as an agency, once you've had an impact on the business, then clients do tend to sort of trust you with the next kind of campaign or the next round of work. And I'm very sort of proud of the fact that we do have that kind of impact on our clients' businesses, where there's good reason to trust the work and trust that we kind of know what we're doing.
That trust is so important. A lot of the clients that I've worked with over the last 20 years, the reason why I'm still working with them is because you've kind of developed this family mentality, and it's about livelihoods, not just for them, but also for you, because you're only as good as the body of your work. That trust is just so important. And I guess specifically with regards to the messages that you work on, getting that right allows your client to be expressive and to be disruptive.
Well, definitely. The strategic rigor needs to be there. It can't just be, like, oh, here's a crazy idea. It's always anchored and rooted in really deep consumer insight, really strong brand truth, like something that's, an emotionally compelling kind of thought or idea. So, the ideas don't come from kind of out of nowhere. That the rigor that goes behind the thinking is very much there, and it definitely helps. When you're selling in an idea that maybe might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable at first, but when you can see that all the thinking behind it is so sound, it's a lot easier to kind of buy an idea like that. It doesn't feel like it's just random or some sort of creative creative indulgence, if you like.
When I think about that Haribo commercial, because, I've seen it over the years, but I didn't realize it's been, 6 years going. When I think about it, and then you mention how it's transcribed into different territories, that's exciting. You create this very unique small moment that connects with so many people very quickly because of the things that you said, which is brilliant.
Oh no, it is, and I mean, it's from countries. I mean, UK, France, to places like Japan. I mean, we're talking to Japan about it at the moment, which is an incredibly culturally different country. I've been to Japan. I don't know if you've been, but for me, it's incredible, isn't it? And I've travelled a lot, but it wasn't until I went to Japan that I was like, my God, actually, this is so culturally different to what we're used to in the UK. But it's still transcending to a market that's just so. So I think that for me, I love that when you've got an idea that's got such a sort of universal human truth behind it that you can literally take it anywhere. I mean, it's obviously executed locally because there's nuances in the localization of it, but the concept is pretty much the same across every market. So it's and it's a campaign that's been running for 6 years in the UK that we've refreshed, and you can just keep, you don't run out of executions either. It's just there's many ways to keep it fresh, and you don't often see campaigns like that these days, to be honest with you.
It's the holy grail of advertising when you can create something that's culturally relevant that lasts. That's the ultimate goal for any advertiser, I think.
Awesome.
And then just so I just want to touch on Japan, actually, because my wife and I, we went to Japan 2 years ago, and it's one of those places that I've always wanted to go, but literally it felt like we got on a plane, landed on another planet, had this experience, and then got back on the plane and came back to the UK. It's like a completely different world.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's incredible. It's like it's been one of my absolute favorite trips of my life, and I'll never forget it because it is just so alien to what we're used to. I mean, the way they socialize, everything. I mean, everything. It's just what they value as a society versus what we value. It's just, I've never seen anything that's so different, really, with the exception of when I first went to Asia, when I'm in my early 20s, and that was a whole new experience for me. But it's a bit like Europe. You've seen one part of Europe. You see some consistencies throughout Europe. And the same with Asia. You see consistencies throughout, different parts of Asia. But Japan's just on its own, like you said, on its own planet.
It's very unique. Yeah. Anyone that's listening, if you haven't been, just go. And if we've got any Japanese listeners, it's really nice to meet you. So we touched on some of the campaigns you worked on, and you also touched on some of the gender equality work that you worked on. It'd be great if we could focus on that. Just talk to us about your association with WACL and the other gender equality things that you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a really strong kind of connection, I guess, with sort of female equality. I think it's probably a lot to do with my childhood, the fact that I went to an all-girls school. I lost my dad when I was very young. I grew up in a home full of girls, really, because my brother left home. He's much older than me, so he'd gone off to uni by the time I was kind of 9. And so, I had a very strong female influence in my life. And I grew up with most of my life feeling like as a woman, there was nothing you couldn't do because it wasn't, being in an all-girls school as well, I think really helped and it was a school that very much sort of encouraged it. At the time, it was kind of had a strong emphasis around what they called wise women, which was women in science education, which was actually at the time incredibly progressive. And for me, it wasn't great because actually I was more into the arts and creativity. But I think for what it did give me was this sense of it's, as a woman, you can do anything, that you're not held back. It was a female, head, strong leadership. It was the times of Thatcher, although, I wouldn't necessarily kind of credit Thatcher for lots of positive things. But what she did inspire as a young woman was this sense of you could be, nothing could, as a woman, nothing should stop you, and nothing does, there's nothing that sort of, there's nothing that kind of potentially can get in your way. And it's not till I got into my career and further into my career, to be honest with you, once I became a mother, I guess, that I actually started to feel held back as a woman, actually. And I never ever felt it my whole life. I never really felt it until I chose to be a mum. And that's where I started to feel that sense of discrimination and that sense of imbalance and all that sort of stuff. And so that's really inspired me to want to try and support greater equality, one within my own industry. And WACL is an organisation that's all about driving equality within the marketing communications industry.
Amazing.
And so from an industry point of view, and also at a wider societal level, obviously with the stuff that we're doing with Women's Equality Party, but for me, it's something I feel really passionate about. And I just, so that's why I've kind of opened myself up to supporting these types of organisations, and I'm involved in lots of initiatives that are all about driving equality. But I guess that's where it comes from. It's that, you kind of grow up slightly. Well, from my point of view, I felt quite ignorant to the inequalities until I got to a certain point in my life. I'm sure there'll be women out there that experienced it much younger than I did and didn't necessarily require becoming a mum for them to experience it, and they would have experienced it in different ways maybe to me. But it is something that I feel is incredibly important. And
absolutely. Tiger Heart, my company, we run an event called Creative Futures, which is about the future of creativity. And we have tech professionals, advertising professionals, artists on a panel discussion talking about the future of creativity. And one of the things we try to do is make sure that there's at least on the panel, 50% of the speakers are female.
Yeah, which is great.
Because particularly in the tech industry, usually at these events, it's just full of men trying to sell a product. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I do feel now more than ever, there's a real problem with the balance of gender equality in all industries. And that needs to change. It's not just blatant discrimination. There's lots of subliminal discrimination that people aren't aware of. And people need to discuss that. I'd really love to get you on one of our Creative Futures events, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with gender equality, and it'd be great to have you talk about that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
With regards to the stuff that you do with WACL, how long have you been working with them?
Well, it's a not-for-profit organisation. So I've been with them. I've been a member. So at the moment there's about 250 members of sort of senior women within the industry. I've been a member, I think, probably for the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And I sit on a number of committees, and we've got a whole range of initiatives. It's all about educating, inspiring women, and empowering them to drive this kind of equality. So they've got a whole program of activity throughout the year that's aimed at kind of mentoring and sort of empowering and facilitating these discussions and inspiring women to put themselves forward into more leadership roles, and also navigate the challenges that they face in a leadership role or towards getting to a leadership role. So there's lots more women behind the organisation doing many things. I'm just sort of contributing to that.
No, absolutely. And it's an amazing thing. And I'll definitely put the website link into liner notes of this podcast, because I think it's a really good platform. How long WACL been going for? You don't mind me asking?
Oh my God, they've been going. Oh God, I should know this. You've got now. I should absolutely know this. I'm going to get my knuckles wrapped for not having it right at the top of my head. But I think it's something like 75 years. It might be more, actually. It might be more than that, actually. It could be close to 100. But it's been going for a really long time, and it was set up originally to obviously support at the time, very, very few women in the industry, which you could imagine at the time it was, quite, unusual to have women in leadership roles within the industry. So, it's a very established organisation. It's raised an incredible amount of money to help fund various charities and supported many causes, as well as all the activity that they're doing directly to help support women in the industry.
You were listed in Campaign's A-list of most influential people. Talk about that and just tell us what that did for you.
It's an incredible honour, to be honest with you. It's something that they publish every year. It's a list they publish every year. That's been going for many years as well. I think I've been in it in the last probably 5 years, I think I've featured. It's incredibly, it's amazing to be recognised in your industry in any shape or form. To be honest with you, Campaign is obviously, I would say, one of the leading brands in the industry, and a very sort of respected, title. So to have that kind of accolade given to you from Campaign is for me was incredibly flattering. I think what it's done, it's nice. It sort of validates the work that you're doing. I guess it helps bring credibility to the agency. I get invited to do things like this off the back of being listed and many other things. So, it's brilliant. As a small independent agency, it's important for us to sort of maintain our profile and, be visible and get an opportunity to sort of showcase, our work and what we do and our culture and belief system. And obviously being in a list like that makes it a lot easier because it just gives you the credibility, I guess.
And have you noticed things change since that notable recognition?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would say absolutely. Yeah, because I think Campaign's such a credible title. It's still a very highly respected sort of go-to publication for what's going on in the media industry and the marketing industry. And so having that kind of validation, I think it's had a big impact. Yeah.
With regards to people that are listening to this who want to thrive in this industry that you work in, talk to us about some of the advice that you would give a young person that's coming into the advertising space.
You've got to be really resilient, but I think that probably applies to almost any industry right now, to be honest with you. I think, it's always been a sort of demanding industry, if you like, whether that's kind of grueling hours or whether it's kind of the competitive nature of the industry, the kind of rapid change that we've all had to deal with, the kind of uncertainty but it's stuff that I guess most people are facing into across, most industries. But I do think, resilience is really key. I think also just maintaining a sort of naivety, a creative naivety, if you like, I think is really important. That kind of curiosity and sort of slight naivety around, well, why not? And, why can't we do it like this? And what about this? So I think having that kind of imagination and kind of curiosity to do things in a way that's new and fresh and different, I think is really important with any kind of creative industry. And just sort of not being comfortable with feeling uncomfortable as well, just putting yourself out there, putting yourself in sort of new and sometimes difficult situations. It took me a long time to feel comfortable doing things like this. It's so easy to kind of go, oh no, I'm not going to do that. It's too difficult, not too, but it's just out of your comfort zone maybe. So I think definitely sort of getting out of your comfort zone and feeling, but like I said, I guess there are things that I would probably say whatever industry you're in at the moment. But yeah.
How did you meet Trevor?
Right. So I met Trev through my old boss. Actually, both of my old bosses. He was friends with my two bosses who were business partners at an agency called Exposure. And we put on a lot of events. We did a lot of experiential marketing, and Trevor was always there. Loves a good party, so he was always at every event. So we'd known each other for quite a long time before we got together. Which is I think as always, which is great because you kind of, and we have lots of shared friends, and so it was just such a natural kind of getting together.
What was the first thing you said to each other?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't know. I was introduced to him at a wedding, actually. So I think it probably would have been, hi, I'm Trevor. Hi, I'm Rania. I think that would have been it. Yeah. And he was wearing a purple suit, actually. And I'll never forget.
Wow.
So I think not many people could drop a purple suit, but it did look good on him.
Awesome. And obviously you guys are married and you work together. What's that like as a working relationship? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Imagine everything just intensified. So the highs are incredibly high because you're enjoying successes together. It's, and there's nothing, it's incredible when when you're winning business and, things are kind of going your way, and it's amazing. It's incredible to be able to share those achievements and successes together is fab. Obviously, when things are tough, it's hard to leave that pressure in the office and not bring it home with you. And I think that can be really difficult. And also, you just can't get away from it. It's not like you can go, it's not like normal couples where one might be having a tough time at work and the other one can support emotionally and vice versa. When it's tough, we're both going through it and we're both feeling, and that can be really difficult. But to be honest with you, it's just, I think, all things considered, it kind of makes you stronger. It's like anything, we know things that experiences make you stronger as an individual, and they make you stronger as a couple.
Yeah.
Right. I think obviously it's got to be right. But I think for us, we've been through so much together on a personal level, a professional level, that it's just brought us, there's such a tight bond through everything we've been through. And we're both massively invested. So we completely understand. There's not that lack of understanding when one of us has kind of got 3 or 4 work-related events in a week and we haven't seen each other all week, or Trev's often shooting abroad, or so that you understand that because you're in the same business. There's none of the kind of misunderstanding. And I think our industry, if you're not in media and if you're in something entirely different, I think it can be quite difficult to understand the way we work.
Absolutely.
And I think when you're both in it, you kind of get it, you understand. But we have to manage. We have to manage it very, very carefully, because it is a challenge to not make everything personal.
Yeah.
Every interaction, every discussion, and that can at times be difficult. But as time's gone on, as each year we've kind of got better and better and found ways to manage things better. And overall it's been an amazing experience.
Absolutely. Family's been working together ever since the cognitive revolution, 300,000 years ago or something like that, whatever it was. So it is a natural step, but it's just quite interesting. I'm sure some people listening would want to hear your thoughts on that. So I really, really appreciate that. When Trevor got his OBE, what was that experience like?
Oh God, I was so proud of him, to be honest with you. It was incredible. I mean, to get to go to the palace, and it was Charles that gave him his OBE, Prince Charles, rather than the Queen, which actually was his preference. He loves sort of Prince Charles, so he was really pleased about that. I mean, obviously, I was massively proud of him. I mean, I don't know if you know what it was for.
Talk to us about that.
So it was basically his kind of contribution to the industry. But I think the thing he was most proud of really was the work he did with an initiative called Create Not Hate, which is basically something that he set up. It would have been, God, now let me think. Could have been probably easily 12 years ago, which is an initiative that's about getting people from sort of different types of backgrounds, generally kind of disenfranchised young people, into the creative industry. So it was all about kind of getting them away from gangs, away from kind of the streets, if you like, into more productive and creative industries. So kids that, probably have no real sense of it as a possibility, as an opportunity, probably don't even know that it's an option for many of them, and just helping sort of inspire them to just take a different path, I guess. So he went back to his old school. It all came from something that had happened. A kid got shot from his old school. And that's what inspired him to go into his old school and start this initiative. And the idea was basically setting the guys a brief around gun and knife crime. And what he did was he put together a whole team of people from his old school that basically wrote, directed, and made this commercial. This film. It wasn't a commercial, actually. It was a short film. It was a short film called Mother's Tear. And it was basically from the actors to the stylists to the cameramen to the director. All of it was people that from this school, most of which were kids, some of them ex-gang members and various other things. So it was something that he'd started. The idea was that this would be adopted much more widely, and it was almost like creating a template for other people to kind of then go on to sort of take out into sort of wider wider sort of communities and schools. I mean, unfortunately, it's just one of those things that, I mean, we ended up as a business funding the whole thing, and as much as people get behind these causes, when it comes down to really getting people to make a commitment and actually kind of move things forward, we found it quite challenging.
Right.
And at the time, it was less of a focus. I mean, the industry is very, very focused now on diversity and inclusion and all that kind of stuff. But at the time, it was less of a focus. So we struggled to kind of drive that momentum around it. But it was something that we were very proud of. And that's one of the main reasons he got his OBE.
That's awesome. It sounds like a fantastic project where you're giving back to the community, which is so important.
So yeah, no, it was great. It was really proud of it. It got screened across a number of Pearl and Dean cinemas across the country. Yeah, it was fantastic. Right.
So Rania, we're coming to the end of this podcast. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Well, I mean, all my details are on the website. So, my mobile, my email. So if you go to quietstorm.co.uk, you can get all my details from there.
Awesome. And do you want to share any social media handles at all?
Oh my God, if I knew what they were, which is terrible, I shouldn't I? You can see that. That's it. That's a giveaway. I don't do my own posting. Sorry.
It's all right. I'll put them in the. I'll find them.
It'll be on there. It'll all be on there. I'm sure. I think all my. If they're not, I'll make sure they're on the website.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate that, Rania. You've been fantastic.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for asking me.
No worries. Thanks, guys. So for all you guys listening, if you really enjoyed that podcast, please share using the hashtag Tiger Heart Chats, or one word. Wherever you are at the moment, I hope you guys are safe. Just stay quarantined and be good.